Welcome to today's Explainer. We're going to unpack how to seamlessly connect massive corporate goals with everyday frontline tasks. Have you ever felt like you're just rowing a boat as hard as you can, but you have absolutely no idea if you're actually heading toward the destination? Well, you are definitely not alone. Today, we're looking at a system designed to fix exactly that. Let's just dive right into this universal frustration. You're working hard every single day, checking off tasks, but you feel totally disconnected from the big picture strategy. It's incredibly common for folks to wonder how their, say, Tuesday morning spreadsheet actually impacts the CEO's grand 5-year vision. And when that connection is lost, motivation just drops, and so much effort gets wasted on things that simply don't move the needle. So the solution we're exploring today is a lean methodology called Hoshin Kanri, which beautifully translates to compass management. And look, this isn't just another corporate buzzword. It's a foundational strategic planning tool used to ensure that the entire organization, literally from the executive suite all the way down to the production floor, is perfectly aligned and moving in the exact same direction. It essentially points everyone's compass true north. Here's our roadmap for this explainer. We'll diagnose the alignment problem, define what Hoshin Kanri actually is, look at the X matrix and catchball tools, walk through the 7 steps to execution, dive into a case study with Turner Construction, and finally, we'll weigh the pros and cons. All right, section 1, the alignment problem. Let's look at a situation that plagues almost every growing organization. Because as companies scale, this massive vulnerability opens up between the high-level strategy and daily execution. Just look at this quote. It captures that brutal reality perfectly. Doug Cooper, who's a VP at Turner Construction, shared this really eye-opening moment. Basically, they brought their top 5 general managers into a room and just asked them to write down the business unit's strategic priorities for the year. The gut punch here? Every single leader had a completely different vision in mind. If the top managers aren't even aligned, there is absolutely no hope for the frontline staff, right? Which brings us to section 2. What is Hoshin Kanri? So how exactly do we fix this fractured focus using our compass? Well, the crucial point here is that this isn't just about setting goals. It's really about engineering simultaneous, unified momentum across every single department. Asana's analysis of this framework highlights that Hoshin Kanri completely eliminates that siloed approach to work. It ensures that no matter what your specific role is, your energy is combining with everyone else's to push the exact same strategic boulder up the hill. Moving on to section 3, the X matrix and catchball. To actually achieve that synchronized momentum, we use something called the X matrix. It's this highly visual tool that organizes complex corporate strategies into a literal compass format. Here's how it works. You map your 3 to 5 year goals down in the south. Then you link those over to your 1-year annual objectives in the West. Those break down even further into specific short-term improvement initiatives in the North, which are then measured by KPIs in the East, and finally assigned to specific human beings, your resources, in the Far East. It literally fits an entire company's strategic ecosystem onto one single visual plane. And this brilliantly illustrates our second tool, the catchball process. So instead of your traditional top-down dictation, where the boss just hands down a rigid mandate, catchball is a two-way street. Leadership and frontline workers literally toss ideas back and forth, like a game of catch. The leaders share the overarching goal. The workers provide real-world feedback on what's actually realistic. They propose their own initiatives, and, they just iterate until everyone truly owns the process. Let's get into the practical side. In section 4, 7 steps to execution. Because having a visual matrix and a feedback loop is great, but you really need a structured step-by-step method to actually execute this stuff. The first 4 phases map out your trajectory. First, you establish the overarching organizational vision. Then, step 2, you develop just 3 or 4 massive strategic objectives. Seriously, any more than that and you completely lose focus. From there, step 3, you break those down into annual SMART goals. And finally, step 4, you cascade those goals down into specific, localized initiatives for individual teams. Basically, you're slicing a massive 5-year vision into manageable daily bites. Now, the final 3 steps are absolutely crucial because they ensure the strategy doesn't just sit in a drawer somewhere gathering dust. Step 5 is pure execution, relying heavily on continuous improvement cycles, like the plan, do, check, act cycle. Step 6 brings in rigorous monthly reviews to check alignment, asking things like, okay, what's actually working and are we still on track? And finally, step 7 is the annual review. This is where you extract all your lessons learned before tossing the catchball right back to start next year's planning. Now for section 5, case study, Turner Construction.
So, what actually happens when you take all these theoretical concepts out of a quiet boardroom and put them onto a loud, chaotic construction site? Well, let's look at Turner Construction. They're an international heavy builder. They did massive projects like Yankee Stadium, and they embarked on a deep, lean journey. Starting around 2014, they realized they desperately needed to become more agile to differentiate themselves in the market. And this journey ultimately culminated in their New York business unit adopting Hoshin Kanri in 2019 to align their massive workforce.
But to make it work, they didn't just use Hoshin Kanri in a vacuum. They combined its vertical, top down and bottom up, alignment with horizontal problem solving, using something called A3 management. This meant that the overarching goals set by the executives trickled all the way down to the literal job site. It completely empowered individual tradespeople to solve daily, frontline problems in a way that directly tied right back to the CEO's ultimate vision. Let's look at exactly how this cascade works in practice. Turner's executive team set this very broad, aspirational goal, living injury-free every day. Nice, right? But through Catchball and the X Matrix, this abstract goal moved down the chain until it reached the frontline crews, where it became highly, highly concrete. The workers noticed that over 200 safety incidents were tied specifically to drywall A-frame carts and ladders. So the frontline workers themselves instituted a strict ladders last policy and rolled out targeted cart training to solve the exact issues right in front of them. And guys, the proof is right here in the data. By empowering the frontline to solve tactical problems that were perfectly aligned with the corporate strategy, Turner's New York business unit saw their recordable safety incident rates just plummet. I mean, they went from a rate of 5.0 back in 2015 all the way down to below 2.0 by 2021. That's well beneath the national average. That right there is the undeniable power of a fully aligned organization. Finally, Section 6, weighing pros and cons. Let's be completely objective here. Because let's face it, no management system is a magic wand. Looking at this breakdown, Asana's analysis highlights how Hoshin Kanri creates incredibly clear accountability. It visually maps exactly who is doing what to support that 5-year plan. However, the cons are very real. The X matrix is notoriously rigid. It really only supports about 4 layers of specificity before the whole chart just becomes completely illegible. Plus, it's highly static. If you're in an industry that requires rapid pivots and complex project dependencies, this highly structured compass might actually slow you down compared to, say, an agile methodology. And that rigidity leads to a very valid critique. Industry analysts, like the folks over at WeevilGo, frequently ask, doesn't this structure risk becoming just another rigid, top-down mandate? Because if executives just fill out the X matrix behind closed doors and hand it to their managers, isn't that exactly the kind of one-way dictation we're trying to avoid in the first place? Well, the answer to that critique lies entirely in execution. If you treat Hoshin Kanri as a pure top-down decree, yeah, it's going to fail. The secret sauce here is the catchball process. Without genuine two-way feedback, where frontline workers actually have the psychological safety to push back, point out flaws, and propose their own solutions, the compass breaks. It's the combination of that visual matrix and those continuous plan-do-check-act cycles that keeps this a living, breathing strategy, rather than just a suffocating set of rules. So, as we wrap up this explainer, I really want to leave you with a thought. Whether you use a digital work management tool like Asana, or literally just a massive piece of A3 paper taped to a conference room wall, the tool itself is secondary. The real question is this. Look at your daily tasks right now. Do they point to your true north? And if not, what's the very first step you're going to take to align your team's compass today? Thanks so much for exploring this with me, and keep learning.